doing? Well, I'm going to be doing a video today on the latest energy changes that have just come into CROSSOUT. I figured, considering it's such a big update and it will affect everyone, that I would give my opinions on it, because odds are the way it affects me will be the way that it has affected you. So yeah, this video is going to be broken down into 3 parts. The first part will be a general overview of what has happened and my opinions on it. The second part will be how this has affected my Clan Wars builds. So my 4 main Clan Wars builds will be my Mastodon Spider, my Griffin Firebug, my Porcupine Hover, and my Ranged Hover, like a Helican or Scope. So I will go over the builds, the changes that I have made for them. And finally, it'll be just my recommendations for improvement on the energy changes, because obviously it's such a big update. You're going to get a couple of things wrong, or there's going to be a couple of issues, and there's 1 or 2 issues in my opinion that might need a bit of a change. But for the most part, if you change this much about the game, you're going to have some issues. No one's perfect. So we'll start off with the general overview of what has happened. Basically, energy consumption across the board has been increased. So modules increase energy, more weapons do, and they have balanced this out by the energy production, or if you will, from carbons and jennies producing more now. So if I can go over to the tech tree of carbons, it goes by rarity and by mass. So the most production or power output in the game is a lightweight legendary carbon at 25. If you go to an epic legendary, you lose 1 energy, and if you go to a legendary medium, you also lose an energy. So a legendary medium carb will produce the same as an epic light. Same goes vice versa for heavies. So a legendary heavy carb will produce the same power output as an epic medium at 23. And so, like, heavy legendary carbs produce 23, these produce 22, and it just goes down and down and down as you go up, down in rarity, I should say. I think overall this is a good update for the game. I'll explain why, because from what I've heard, most people's opinions are quite negative, which is understandable. You come into the game, everything's changed, you need to change your build, it's annoying as hell. But in my opinion, if you look at this from the perspective of a newer player, so if I can go to modules, I'll explain what I mean by this. So say if I was a newer player, and the devs are bringing this in because they're starting to introduce more and more legendary modules into the game naturally. And they wanted to address this issue, I think, before it got out of hand. So we'll use cloaks as an example for this, because this is a good example. In the old system of energy consumption, there was no downside in running a better rarity module. So if you wanted this, a chameleon, for example, an epic cloak would use the same amount of energy as a legendary cloak. But the advantages you would get from running in a legendary cloak were huge, because they both consume 1 energy, but you're going from a 10-second cloak maximum to a whatever you want, essentially. A Yeti rune with 1 rune has a minute of cloak. And this completely changed the meta. You'll see it on my Griffin Firebug. With a Yeti Griffin, you can spawn, cloak up, drive all the way around the map, hit your Griffin perk, and then hit a hover team in the back, and they have no idea where you are. This would cost the same amount of energy as a chameleon. So players who didn't have Yeti and who had to run chameleon were at a huge disadvantage because of this. And that's probably why they've brought this in that now, if you're a player who can't afford a legendary module, say you can't afford a Yeti, or you can't afford a new reload module, a legendary reload module, or you just weren't here for the battle passes, then you might have a worse, or a less efficient epic module, but you save an energy point in doing that. So the player who you were playing against, who might have a Yeti, he might have an advantage in regards to cloak, but he's paid an extra energy for that advantage. So now you still make it back a bit. You know, you can run like an Oculus and you'll be a bit better against anti-dog, and that's how it's affected the players with basically legendary everything, like me, or like the most meta modules and parts and guns, it's affected them negatively, but it will benefit the players with less equipment or less rarity equipment. So I think that's a good change overall. I think it's pretty intelligent change, to be honest, just because as they introduce more and more legendary modules, it's just going to become an issue where you're not going to be able to afford it, or you're not going to be able to buy your way there or keep up with the battle passes. Especially if you don't play the game like all the time, like I do. It's going to come to a point where you're going to play a guy who has all of these things because he played the battle passes, and you're going to lose purely because of that reason and no other, which can be annoying. So I think it's fairer for the newer players that the devs have done this. So fair play. It is a bit annoying for people to come in and none of your builds work. You need to change them all. I understand that, but I think if you look at this like objectively, it's a pretty good deal. It really helps the newer players. So that's part one done with. What's next? Next will be my Clan Wars builds. So I'll start with a Master Spider because that is what I do. Right, so Master Spider didn't need to be changed much. This entire update can be summed up by the Oculus update, essentially, for me at least, or the Goodbye Verifier update, because my build when I started was 1 point over, and in order to fix that, I just changed my verifier for an Oculus. So if those are now, verifier now, it consumes 2 energy, Oculus only consumes 1, so you're going to see a lot more Oculuses in the game. Because the idea, basically, is that, let me go back to modules and explain it better. Oh, no, actually, let me do, this will explain it much better. The idea is that you have to sacrifice something with regards to power consumption. So you can sacrifice your reload, you can sacrifice your armor, you can sacrifice your cloak, not like sacrifice, but sacrifice the rarity of these things, or you can sacrifice your decloak. So in terms of what you want to do first, decloaking will always go first, essentially, followed by cloak. The last things you're going to want to sacrifice are things like an Omamori or a reload module or an engine, because the downsides to not having them are huge. So if anything you're going to sacrifice first, is either going to be your cloaking capabilities or your decloaking capabilities, which is why on the Bastion I had to sacrifice my verifier for an Oculus, because it's a nerf, obviously, but compared to sacrificing the engine or sacrificing my DPS or something like that, it's just much better. So that's the Bastion dealt with. Next will be my Griffin Bug. The sacrifice again was just, I had a verifier at the back, swapped that for the Oculus, so I saved 1 energy, and that's essentially it. The power consumption changes don't affect most builds, to be honest. They affect hovers the most. So on my ranged hover, I had to sacrifice, basically I had to just get rid of the verifier. I had a verifier by here. I had to get rid of that. What I might do in the future is get rid of the Yeti, swap the Yeti out for a Chameleon, so I save an energy there, and then put a Oculus on. So that way I don't think I need a Yeti on a ranged hover as much. A 10-second cloak on a ranged hover should be sufficient, because you don't need it forever. And then the Oculus will help in terms of decloaking for dogs. So I think that's probably what I will do in the future, but basically I got rid of some decloak again. The paw cover, what did I do? The paw cover, I had to flat out just get rid of the Yeti, because I was 2 over, sorry. So I got rid of the Yeti, got the 1 Oculus. I still get the Beholder cloak, which isn't a bad thing, to be honest, because before this I had a Beholder and a Yeti, which was kind of pointless. But this will work for now. I still keep my double capcans. I don't really need much of a cloak on a Beholder pork capcan, because it's meant for anti-dogs, I'm not pushing like hovers or spiders for this thing. So I just got rid of the Yeti, put an Oculus on because I needed to save 2 energy. And that's basically it. If you want to sum it up like that, if you want to sacrifice anything, you sacrifice either your cloaking or your decloaking. You never want to sacrifice your Omamori or your engine or your DPS, like a radiator or a reload, because they're very, very important. they make the biggest difference in the game. So first things to go is either the decloaking or the cloaking capabilities. So that was pretty easy changes. I just put a bloody Oculus. I just put an Oculus on everything essentially and got rid of what I needed to. The third thing about this update that I wanted to go over was the problems. Now, I've only had problems with regards to energy consumptions on a build that I needed to run Doppler on. So Dopplers, if you're not aware, cost 2 energy now. Where's my Bastion Doppler? So this is a bit of a problem on my Bastion, for instance, because the Bastion is epic rarity, so it gets less than, say, a cohort, only 22 points of energy. And if I need to run a Doppler, which is 2 points of energy, either I sacrifice the engine for a hot red. Now, I don't want to do that because I'm losing out on 3 tons of mass. That's a huge amount for an epic cap. The only spiders who can afford to lose something like 3 tons of mass and not really be affected would be something like the super heavies, like a cohort or the machinist. But 3 tons on a Bastion is going to make a bigger difference. I'm going to lose like 1,000 health at least on that. So I don't want to get rid of that. The only thing I can think of getting rid of would be the flywheel. Now I can swap a flywheel for the special reload module, but then I'm losing 11% of my reload, 11% DPS. That's a huge chunk. So I think that I'm just not going to run Bastion if I'm on Doppler. If I ran a cohort instead, I would get 1 extra point of energy because the cohort is a legendary, I guess more than an epic, and then my problems are sorted. But a Bastion Doppler build like this, I would not recommend from this point forward. Yes, basically the problems stem from the Doppler consumption. So if I wanted to go over my bug Doppler as well, this is a better example. My bug Doppler is 1 over. It's got a legendary Griffin. So that's the most energy output I can get. If I was on Blight, I'd be 2 points of energy under. And the only real, the only real solution to this would either be getting rid of the Pegasus. Now, you don't want to get rid of Pegasus for the hot ride, because again, you're losing 3 tons of health, and the dog doesn't weigh much, so it's going to be very squishy without it. Or I can get rid of the cloak. The problem is that with my comp, if I'm the only bug and I have 3 spider teammates, I'm gonna need that Yeti, because if I'm using a chameleon, they will see on the map which side of the map that I am on, and once I hit that cloak, they're just gonna unanimously push me because they know where I'm coming from, and it doesn't work for my comp. So on my comp, I need the Yeti, or it just doesn't work. If you're in a full dog team, it doesn't matter that you have 1 guy or 2 guys that has a chameleon instead of a Yeti, because if they know that one of your guys is on the far right of the map, for instance, they're not going to be able to bum rush him away before and deal with him before your teammates, because they have 3 other firebugs that are coming in to hit them, and they just half know, it's just a distraction more than anything. But if it was just 1 firebug with 3 spider teammates, they could just bum rush that one side of the map, deal with the bug as quick as possible, and then try to deal with the spiders. So on a Griffin bug, I'm probably going to have to, because if I'm on a Griffin bug Doppler, I'm probably going to have to run a blue radiator instead of an epic radiator. Now the problem with that is that there is a very large disparity. No, it's not a blue, sorry. A special. Now the problem with that, actually no, it is blue. Okay, so the problem with that is blue radiator is a huge at a huge disadvantage compared to an epic. So if you look at the epic, it's at 40% difference, and you don't even get a perk. So this is a massive nerf, and you're only saving 1 energy for it. The same goes for the discharge and the flywheel. So if you look at this, the difference between the legendary and the epic is only 5%. But the difference between the special and the epic is 10%. So if you ran this, you get a 10% disadvantage in terms of DPS, and that is a huge nerf in Clan Wars. So I think either the Doppler needs to be taken down to 1 energy point, so that the Doppler user doesn't get screwed over too badly, or the difference between the epic and the special, or the epic and the blue, needs to be shorter, it needs to be better. So I think the discharger, for example, should move from 15%, from 10 to 15. So then you've got 15% buff, 20%, 25. And then I think the chill should move from 40% overheat to 60%. So that way you've got 60%, 80%, and then you've got 90%, but with 20% cooling, so say about 100. I think that's more balanced. But that's honestly the only real downside I can think of with regards to this update. Everything else seems fine to me. Everything else seems kind of logical as well. Anything? Yep, and that's pretty much it, to be honest, guys. Like I said, so if you're making changes to your builds, first thing I would recommend would be get rid of any decloaking or cloaking. That you do not want to get rid of your engine, you do not want to get rid of your DPS, and you don't want to get rid of your armor mori or protection, stuff like that. Unless you, yeah, you can afford to, but odds are you can't. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Hope you have a good day, and if you have any questions and comments, just let me know. Go, guys. I'm dropping my PlayStation off later to get fixed, and I've been told that I will be finished by tomorrow afternoon or Saturday morning for me to pick up. So if it is finished by tomorrow afternoon, I will chuck up a stream, probably stream for like hopefully 3 or 4 hours, because I got some stuff to build, run some PvP and stuff just to test out the overheating. And yeah, so the cutoffs with regards to streams should be finished after, well, from now on essentially. So yeah, have a nice one, and I'll see you on Saturday morning.